Well, my father was actually born in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. His parents came over in the early 1900s from Naples in Italy. My mother and her family, they came over by boat, by ship actually, in 1923. And it was my mother, and she has three brothers and three sisters. It was seven of them, and her mother and father. Well, my grandfather learned the English language because he had been commuting for all those years. He would stay for a long time when he would come. My grandmother never learned English, and she would communicate with all of her children in Italian. My mother's siblings, several of them changed their names. Thomasina became Macy, Giovannina became Jenny, Giuseppe became Joe, Vincenzo became Vince. The other ones kept their names, and they landed in Ellis Island, and they relocated to Maryland because my grandfather's family had already moved into Maryland, and that's where they ended up. I do have a picture that's framed of the ship that they came on. My mother said it took like 2 months, and I have the original manifest when they came over in 1923. That's all in Italian. I had that framed too. The younger siblings, my mother and her brother and his sister, they adopted fine because they went to school. My mother was like 10, and her youngest sister was only like 3 years old. They were fine. The older ones, they did okay because they were much older. They all adapted eventually by getting jobs and going to school. My childhood was very protective, but it was a wonderful childhood. And so I grew up with all my cousins in that neighborhood. And my uncle owned a grocery store on the corner that everybody went to. Everybody looked out for one another back then, whether you were related or not. And it was simpler. You didn't have the internet. I don't think we got TV till the 1950s. The one thing that stands out in my mind is going down to the Inner Harbor, and we would go down there when the boats would come in with fresh produce and fresh seafood, and they would come in every single day down there, and we would get the fresh seafood, which was really nice. They had the fish market, and we lived with my grandmother. We all spoke Italian when we were kids because my grandmother couldn't understand English. But once she died, my mother stopped speaking Italian in the house, so we lost a lot of that language. My mother and father were married from 1940 until she was in a car accident and passed away in 1997. My mother was the kindest, most giving person. So was my father. My father was a carpenter. My mother was a seamstress. She made suits for a living. And my father worked at Bethlehem Steel. I was an administrative coordinator, the last job I had for 30 years in a hospital pharmacy. I have one brother left. Well, they're all older than me. I'm the youngest. But my oldest brother passed away last year. My sister passed away in 1999. She was 56 years old. She was my best friend. She was like my second mother. And she's the reason that I crochet today, because she pushed me to learn how to crochet and to do all these other arts and crafts that I kept throwing the things across the room and say, I can't do that. She said, yes, you can. And because of her, I love and I do and I make the cutest things because I enjoy doing it. They're little critters, and I've given them to so many people in the family and friends. I miss her still to this day. If my family wasn't here, I might have not wanted to stay, but my family, they are the most important things to me. My children and my grandchildren are the best motivation I have, because if I'm feeling down, they always pick me up, and I always am there for them, and I'll help them in any way I can because they are the greatest gifts that I've ever had in my life. I adore each and every one of them. I met my husband at a wedding, and I knew when I saw him across the room that that was the person I was going to marry. He had just gotten out of the Marine Corps like 6 months before. You know what that's saying, once a Marine, always a Marine? He was. He adored the Marine Corps until the day he died. Pop was very loving, very kind, unconditional love, never any strings attached. But most of all, he made me laugh. He was so intelligent, and his humor was unbelievable. He would always, always make me laugh, and I would make him laugh. He was just an unbelievable person, and his children and myself and grandchildren will all miss him because he was the best that ever was. The most extraordinary thing to me was when my kids were young and they were all learning, they all swam and they would jump off the high dive, and I would be in the baby pool by myself, and I decided I had to learn how to swim even though I was terrified. And I overcame that. Not that I can swim well, but you can't touch me in a pool because I'll sink. But that to me was one of my overwhelming fears that I was able to deal with. But most of all, it's my grandchildren.